Good day, everyone. Welcome to our online training, which is called Safety Rules or Industrial Safety Rules of Pressurized Equipment or Vessels. As you understand, we are going to speak about different types of vessels and requirements for that vessels in order to make the job with them much safer and much reliable during the standard service life when you or anyone uses that pressure vessel. Also, of course, everybody knows that using using pressure equipment or even standing or working nearby pressure equipment, it can be dangerous if you do not follow, if you don't know, for example, technical characteristics. And today, during this training, we are going to mention or cover all those aspects. And actually, this training is given according to ROK law, which is called the Law of Industrial Safety for Pressurized Vessels, dated of December 30 from 2014, and this order or this law has a number 358. If you want to look for in the internet that source or that let's say the information, you can dial just the order or prikaz number 358 dated of 14th of December 2014. And before we start, as usual, I need to talk about introduction. So today we are going to capture the next following items. The first, it is going to be about general provisions, like what is a pressure vessel, what is not pressure vessel. The next, vessel design, materials, then welding, construction, commissioning of the vessel, repair of the vessel. What should we do if we need to shut down any vessel? Also, how to install, how to register vessel, because if you remember from industrial safety training, we said that each industrial hazardous facilities, objects shall be registered with the local industrial safety authorities. And today we are going to speak in these terms, in details, how to register with local authorities. Also, we need to talk or we need to know how to provide or perform maintenance of any vessels, because vessels are different, and one of the important or necessary criteria for safer and reliable usage of any vessel, it is the knowing the basic procedures, laws, or technical characteristics of each vessel, and how to perform maintenance of that vessels. The next or last one, and as I mentioned, we're going to speak about emergency shutdown of vessels and vessel repair. And before we go to next slide, I have a question that how do you understand the word vessels or pressure vessels? So you need to keep in your mind in this question and try to find an answer to that question. Of course, I understand that many people may think that pressure, it can be like cylinders, or it can be like what else? Cylinders, gas cylinders, reservoirs, or huge tanks, and etc. Of course, all of them can be pressures or pressurized vessels or equipment. But roughly saying, pressure vessel, it's an equipment. Okay. So what is pressure vessel? Pressure vessel, it can be any container that is used to keep, store, or move liquids or gases in different forms, or different type of liquids and gases in the temperature that is in the pressure and under the pressure and temperature that is much different than ambient pressure and temperature. So for example, imagine propane cylinders, or imagine cylinders with oxygen, or cylinders with nitrogen, or huge tanks, for example, rail cars for propane, for example, and etc. So all of them can be good examples of pressurized equipment or vessels. And according to the law, as I mentioned, the title, the number of the law, if you remember, there are its own explanation of our government. What is pressurized vessel or equipment? So, for example, vessels operating under pressure of water within a temperature higher than 115 degrees Celsius, or another liquid with a temperature higher than the boiling point of the water, or at a pressure of 0.07 megapascals. Or also we gave these pascals, also this measurement, in two different other measurements like kilogram force 2 centimeters square or psis. Or next, vessel operating under vapor or gas pressure above the 0.07 megapascals, or bombs designed for the transportation and storage of compressed, liquefied and dissolved gases under pressure above 0.07 megapascals, and etc, etc. So this information you can capture in the third slide of this presentation for pressurized vessel and equipment. And for a note at the below of this slide, I showed the equivalence or measurement, and so those devices we call as pressure device or pressure equipment. So I hope you got understanding of pressure equipment. And for your information, actually we will be talking about this in the future in the next few slides, but before, just in advance, I'm telling you that each pressure vessel device equipment must have supporting documents, and you need to be familiar with that supporting documents. In the supporting documents shall be written, given that equipment device is considered as pressure device or equipment. So it's for you, as I would like to say that like a reference information. And examples, as you see in this slide, it can be pipelines, for example, in the oil and gas industry, or in for domestic users we use pipelines. It can be rail cars, cylinders, and other huge device equipment that works under the pressure that is much different than ambient pressure, and also temperature can be very just different than ambient temperature. And speaking about pressure vessels safety, these trainings or all ROK required safety trainings like industrial safety or safety and security or fire technical minimum and etc. All those trainings are based on safety. And I would like to mention why working with pressure vessel has its own training, but if you consider like many people may consider that it's not so dangerous, or if you have less experience with working with pressure equipment, you may not know what could happen to you or to anyone if safety measures or rules not followed. And when I talk about safety, we shall look at the history of industrial safety. So actually industrial safety, if you remember from the previous courses or trainings, let's say has been developing since roughly saying at the beginning of 1930s or 1940s, when World War II started, and countries like United Kingdom, France, Germany, Russia or Soviet Union as well, with including United States and Japan, where every man almost they went to the war. And before previously the war, men, like let's say they were the how to say this main workforce at the industrial fabrics or plants or factories. But when every man almost went to the war, instead of the men, government, people, plant, they started to involve women and children, or child, or let's say the US people, let's say. And at that point, at that case, that company, that country is faced with very huge problem. People, those specialists, young generation, women, old people, they didn't know safety rules, and explosions and the shutdowns of devices happened very commonly. It was very, let's say, how to say, it wasn't beneficial to, roughly saying, to countries or let's say fighting countries, because each second it was let's say it could, let's say, determine the future of the war. So starting from that point, government of United Kingdom started to give trainings in terms of safety and industrial safety, and started to implement some safety rules or industrial safety rules in order to avoid shutdowns and explosions, in order to avoid let's say the casualties at the workplace, because each person, even it can be children, women, old people, they were considered as a very rare specialists as well, in order to save them, in order to save the production, manufacture of the bombs and technique and devices was implemented were implemented basic industrial safety rules. And starting from that place, let's say industrial safety rules started to have its own history. And of course, at the beginning, not everything was perfect, and we have one of the world's worst industrial disaster. It happened in 1984 between 3rd and 4th December. If you look at the screen, so this incident is called as Bhopal disaster. Actually, what happened and what was over there? Bhopal, it's a state or city in the middle of India, and in 1980s, that place was a center of the manufacturing of pesticides. So, because Indian government, they just faced Indian government, they faced or they required help from United States government to build plants for manufacturing, for producing some chemicals like pesticides, because people in India, they were growing and growing, and to feed them, of course, Indian government needed some just how to say plants or industry, let's say, roughly saying. So, and companies, plants, factories, and government, they work very just how to say, with low safety understanding and low safety culture, and that led to that very bloody history. I mean, the incident in India, the Bhopal disaster. The main reason was the cylinder, not cylinder actually, it was the reservoir for one of the chemicals for producing pesticide. It was exploded. And the reason was that pressure equipment hadn't been inspected or checked for many years, and nobody knew that gas leakage or breakage could happen at any time. And as a result, 42 tons of chemical vapor just released, and many people who live around that city, it was very, I mean, the city with high density of the people, and about 2,300 people died at that night, and other days, next few weeks, died over than 3,000 people, and next years died over than 38 or over almost 39,000 people, and injured. They were injured apart from fatalities. So as one of the resources said, over than 500,000 people were injured from that dangerous gas, which is called methyl cyanide. So imagine if you're not looking after safety of device, what may happen. And if you consider that in Atyrau or in other cities of our country, Kazakhstan, like Almaty, Aktau, or Uralsk, there are many plants or manufacturing places of chemicals, gases near the cities. If those safety measures not followed, imagine what happened to city, what happened to people. That's why I think safety of pressure equipment, pressure vessels, and special requirements shall be known by any worker who works near or with that safety and pressure equipment. And as we discussed with you previously, the incidents and the definition of pressure vessel, right now we need to look at how to make safe, or what requirements do we have related to pressure vessel design. And pressure vessel design shall consider the ways of providing next important items or things. The first of all, pressure vessel design shall ensure the safe and reliable operation of pressure vessel before and during the operation of pressure vessel. And the next, pressure vessel design shall provide safe operation during estimated service life and ability of technical inspection, cleaning, purging, full service life, and discharge, blowing, repair, and inspection of pressure vessel. And If there are something outside of pressure vessel, like and estimated service life of pressure vessel, it must be given in passport of pressure vessel. Pressure vessels, pressure equipment, they may have internal or external devices like mixers, coiled pipes, liners, shut off and control valves, and etc. Despite the presence of those devices, no of those devices shall be obstacle for providing next operations, like as I mentioned, inspections, cleaning, purging, full discharge, and etc. And they should be removable, or if pressure vessel has its own body, let's say welded details, so that welded details shall be removable or unwelded. Then after performing those needed activities, they shall be moved back, or let's say the welded back onto the place. The next requirement, pressure vessels, each pressure vessel must have let's say the pressure gauges and special valves that shall be helpful to release extra energy from inside of the any pressure vessel, and the tap or valve shall be directed to the place where the jet of the extra liquid or gas will not injure or touch working operational personnel. Then if pressure vessel is removable, it must have special devices, parts like paddles or saddles, that will not give to pressure vessel to overturn or self-dumping. And the next one, grounding and electrical equipment of the vessel are carried out in accordance with electrical safety rules of Republic Kazakhstan. For example, if pressure vessel needs some electrical devices on its body, like bulbs or lighters, for example, providing or pulling those cables shall be followed according to electrical safety rules of Republic Kazakhstan. And you may ask me how to enter pressure vessel. It can be confined space, and if there are any exits or windows to enter into pressure vessels. Of course, it shall be considered entrance to pressure vessels, and we have special requirements. Even those numbers for doors and let's say the openings for pressure vessels are shown or considered in the law. According to the that law or requirement, a vessel with an internal diameter of more than 800 millimeters have hatches, and with an internal diameter of 800 millimeters and less, handholds. The next, the internal diameter of the round hatches is at least 400 millimeters. If there are some covers weighing more than 20 kilograms, are provided with lift and turn device for their opening and closing. So pay attention to these devices and all those requirements we have for pressure vessels. And of course, pressure vessels for maintenance shall be equipped with ladders, with proper equipment for getting into pressure vessel, like doors as I mentioned, and lighters, and with, let's say, the tables or let's say the labels that will help to for workers to understand the, for example, indicators, basic signs, and etc. So like this, we finished the next part, which was about pressure vessel design. Okay, the next part will be about the materials, and we need to capture the items or parts where we will be looking at the requirements for quality of materials. It is very important to choose the needed and safer type of material for any pressure vessels. And also, if you know, even one pressure vessel may have different details that made of different materials. So for example, if you imagine fire extinguisher or similar gas cylinders, their bodies can be made of the iron or different grades of the steels, but the tape or valve can be made of brass. So for each material, for their components, for example, there are some answers, requirements, and we'll be speaking about them. So first of all, when we choose materials or vessels, for the materials, we need to take into account the next criteria, that material shall have the resistance to difference of temperature, pressure, corrosivity, for example, because many different chemicals, acids aggressive chemicals may react or act on the pressure vessels. And for example, if your organization or company is going to manufacture any pressure vessel, of course you will be ordering some material from the countries, from other companies, and those materials must have supporting documents. In that supporting documents, all just requirements, all that information about materials you can see, and all materials shall meet national requirements or national standards. National requirements and national standards. And as I know, currently there are over than 1,500 different alloys that are used to prepare details and pressurized vessels and equipment. And the next one, to use non-metallic materials is allowed with the permission of authorized agency on the basis of the conclusion of specialized organizations. And each materials, and I mean each device, pressure equipment, after welding, their welded parts, details, and each seamless, for example, joints shall be tested with different testing methods. Most of them, which is called many of them, I mean there are like destructive and non-destructive tests, but mostly hydro test is used here. And screws and studs or bolts are made of steels of different grades, and at the manufacture of steels of the same grade with different hardness. In this case, the hardness of the screw is lower than the hardness of the stud. And you may ask me a question, why is there this kind of requirement? So easy answer: if one detail is softer, one detail is harder, when we, let's say, screw to each other, the the thickness will be higher. But if you imagine if two different details, they are made of the materials with similar or same hardness level, they will be, let's say, kicking each other. That's why there will not be the proper connection between those screws and bolts. And about production, reconstruction, installation, commissioning of pressurized equipment and vessels. Manufacturing, reconstruction, building pressure vessel shall be carried out by the organization that has enough proper means to do it, to build it. And the quality control system shall be performed or applied within the organization. It shall not be given to other departments, organization. If your company is making pressurized vessels, your company also must arrange quality control system. And of course, we know that many details, many parts of pressure vessel, they are metals or metal-based alloys, and in order to connect them, we use welding. So what is welding? I guess no need to ask you, no need to explain you. And we are going to speak about requirements for welding activities in our country. So the first of all, in order to be welder, person needs to have education. It can be secondary education or higher education. There is no difference for being welding. Of course, preferable is higher education. Then they shall be, each welder shall be certified. It means after graduation of just let's say education center or secondary education center or high, for example, education center, each welder must pass exams, or during that exam also after passing successfully exam will be given the certificate or document that confirms that welder is ready to perform welding activities. And what else? Also, in that certificate shall be shown the ways of welding or the types of welding that can be done, performed by the welder. And also, after passing exam, each welder must have its own personal stamp. So you may ask, what is stamp? It is like a stamp in the papers. It's not the stamp like in the papers. It's not a signature, but it looks like signature. It is similar to signature of each person. So that stamp shall be, let's say, put on any vessel or metals with electronic waste. Let's say there is some waste, electronic waste. And what else? What other requirements? despite the fact that a welder can be very experienced and may have enough knowledge in the sphere of welding, before giving him permission to start to weld any device in the organization where welding is in process, that welder must pass the test again. So actually it is very simple way that two different metals will be given to welder, and welder needs to weld them, and that test a detail. If it passes exam, or let's say the quality control system, welder will be allowed to start welding. And apart from preparation and documentation for welders, what other requirements do we have for welding? According to standards, national standards, welding shall be performed in the areas with higher, with temperature that higher than 0 degrees. But at some points, for example, if you weld outside somewhere in Tengiz field, for example, or you must do it outside, there is no other options. Anyway, shall be considered the ways where welding place shall be covered with shelters, just made of different materials, in order to protect the welding point from the precipitation like wind, snow, and rain, also from the dust and just the wind. And welder with welding part shall be captured with or covered with this, let's say, the shelter. And so it's a requirement of national standard. For example, I used to work for many years in Tengiz oil field, and I was a part of the project gathering. It means gathering of all pipelines around the Tengiz oil field, and my company was pulling over than 366 kilometers of pipeline, and all of them, not for 100%, they were metal based tubes or pipelines. And for making joints in winter, autumn, springtime, it was very difficult. Our company trying to arrange shelters for the welders, also other devices like for example, ventilation system in the shelters, and etc. So all of them shall be done according to safety and national requirements. And the next, as I told you, there is stamps for the welders. So you may ask me, what is the stamp, how does it look like, and etc. If you look at the picture on the right top corner, there is a welding seam. So, and near to welding seam, if you see the numbers 1 and 3, so below the 1 over the 3, what does it mean? So it's two different stamps of two different people, because welder stamp is put at distance of 20 and 50 millimeters from the weld edge outside. It's a first requirement. If you see between the welding edge and stamp, there is a similar distance, about 20, maybe 50 millimeters. So, and if welding has been performed by two welders, identification number of welder who made outside weld shall be located above the line, and who made inside weld should be located below the line, as you see from this line. For example, in our case, number 3, it means the signature of the person, welder, who made welding activity outside, and number 1 of the welder who made the welding activity from inside. But sometimes it may happen that one person can weld all device, huge device. In that case, no need to put near to each welding seam. Welding stamp is enough to leave your welding stamp near to the passport of device, and in the passport shall be shown the place where a welder left its own stamp. And you may ask me a question, why do we need to leave stamps? Question is it has very easy answer. It helps to identify the person who did that welding activity in such cases. So that's it about welding activities. Okay, and I hope you understand the importance of welding and importance of the stamps of the welders. And right now you may have question, is it 100% safe, or is it 100% reliable, or can we 100% rely on welders' skills? So what if in the welding joints, for example, there are some how to say, the holes, cracks, or pores, and etc. Of course, it's a very good question, because there is another way or another system that helps to check the quality of welder's job or work, which is called test type. There are two different test types. The first test type, which is called destructive test. The second type, which is called non-destructive test. In our country, we use both of them, but some people may think that those test types may be interchangeable, or it is better to use, for example, non-destructive test because it's not costly, it's not so laborious, and etc. But in real life, if you even look at the national, let's say, the standards, requirements, documents, there is no such requirements, or there is no such word even that we can change destructive test with non-destructive test, because both of them has its own purposes. And here during this training, we are going to pay attention mostly on the non-destructive test. And what is non-destructive test? It can be any test which is included into the list as shown in this slide, like a visual inspection, hardness measurement, hydrostatic testing, pneumatic testing, and etc. And all test results shall be written in the protocol, and after passing just a test result or quality test, equipment can be put into the operation. So that's it. Next part about documentation and marking. Imagine you are buying vessel. It can be any vessel, gas cylinder, for example. Do you know what documents do you need to have to check the quality, service, for example, information, manual? Of course, yeah, each vessel must be delivered to a buyer, for example, to the last point, at least with two documents. The first document, which is called passport, the second document, which is called manual. So according to ROK laws, passports shall have information in two languages. It can be at least two languages. The first language is Kazakh, second language it is Russian language. And apart from the passport, also shall be included into the passport manual, and if it's needed, some technical tables, schemes, and etc. for the documents of the vessels. And also, all vessels, apart from the passport and manual, must be equipped with the labels. And labels for what? Labels contain information about the just the purpose of the vessel, minimum, maximum temperature, working pressure, and etc. And there are some requirements for the vessels, if the plate should be fixed to each vessel, but it is permitted to not fix a plate to the vessel with outside diameter less than 325 millimeters. If it's over, yeah, you can do. If it's less, it is allowed to not fix any plate. And look at the next information. In this slide, you see the sample of the plate. What information shall be included into the plate? The first, it is trademark, the second, vessel's name, then serial number of the vessel, year of manufacture, working pressure, design pressure, test pressure, allowable maximum and minimum temperature of vessel's walls, and the last one, vessel weight in kilograms. Kilograms because it is in Kazakhstan. The next example of the pressure vessel label. It's a pressure vessel label of the, let me say, the gas cylinder, and you see the next information like a name of manufacturer, vessel serial numbers, date of production, working and design pressure, and vessel's name or designation of the vessel, and other details in this sample. So you see here some requirements for the documents like passport, technical schemes, and a label should be they gone together with any pressure vessel. I'm ready. Next part is about fittings, process control instrumentations, pressure safe valves. And if you want to know why are we going to capture directly this information, those slides, because how would you know about the working conditions of pressure vessel? So for example, if you want to know how pressure vessel is safe to stay nearby the pressure vessel, or if pressure vessel is let's say safe, to stay nearby that pressure vessel. And in order to know all those characteristics like a pressure, temperature, liquid measure, for example, level of liquid, you have to know, or you need to use different devices. And what devices? Actually, there are different devices like isolation valves, shut-off valves. For example, if there is a high pressure, or let's say the environment inside of pressure vessel is too high, for example, or too much, you need to control by opening that valve and by releasing extra energy to outside. The next, pressure gauges. You need to look at the pressure gauge. It's an instrument or like a manometer, and that instrument, small instrument, will tell you information like how much pressure is inside of that pressure vessel. Then temperature measuring equipment. Temperature and pressure, they are two physical phenomena, let's say, or characteristics. There are two that will be useful to explain the conditions, working conditions of pressure equipment. Then safety devices, or how to say this, pressure safety valves, for example. And last one, fluid level gauges. And please pay attention, vessels equipped with quick disconnect caps have safety devices that exclude the possibility of switching on the vessel and the pressure when the cap is not fully closed, and cap opening when there is a pressure in the vessel. And I would like to show you the next slide. Here we're going to speak about shut-off and control valves. You may ask me, so what does shut-off valves or control valves mean? Shut-off device or control valves, those are devices that will help to, as I mentioned, open a pressure vessel to release excessive energy or power from inside to outside. Of course, that jet set, let's say, or jet of the the hydrogen sulfide, or the gases or liquids, shall be directed to a safer place where there is no operational personnel or there is no damage to environment. And shut-off control valves, they have main function to shut and open the vessel. And depending on the type of vessel, a type of environment that contains a vessel, shut-off and control valves may have or may be manufactured from different metals and alloys. And as I know, in the science today, there are over than 1,500 different types of materials that were used for manufacturing shut-off and control valves. And all shut-off and control valves must contain the next information on its body, or they need to have special labels, and in that label you may see the next information like a name or trademark of manufacturer, internal diameter of the shut-off valve, the next pressure rating like in megapascals, fluid flow direction, and material grade. If you remember, I told you fluid flow direction, and on the flywheel of valves the direction of its rotation is indicated when opening or closing. And we need to go to next slide. So the next slide is about the pressure gauges. Pressure gauges or manometers. So what does it mean? It's a device we need to use, that we use to check the pressure level. Many people may consider or may confuse manometers with barometers. What does manometer mean? Manometer means a device that we use to check the pressure of instrument or devices. Barometer we use in order to check atmospheric, let's say, pressure. And about pressure gauges should be installed at the place where the scale and the screen of pressure gauge is visible to operational personnel. And even there is a requirement for the level of installation of pressure level, the height of installation of pressure level. At what height or what level shall be installed pressure gauge. So depending on the place on the equipment, pay attention to the next information. No less than 100 millimeters shall be the scale or screen of pressure gauge if your pressure gauge is going to be installed at the distance or at the height not over than 2 meters. If the place where your pressure gauge is going to be installed located between 2 and 3 meters, it means your pressure gauge scale should not be smaller than 1160 millimeters. And the next one, installation of pressure vessels over than 3 meters at the platform is not allowed. It means Personnel who is going to operate and check that equipment cannot see the pressure gauge. That's why it's not allowed. And the next one, pressure gauges shall be, how to say, they shall meet the national standards, national requirements. There are over than 10, maybe 15 different types and calibration of pressure gauges. But despite this fact, all pressure gauges need to be marked or shall be red line specifying working pressure should be painted on the scale, not on the glass. Working pressure should be ranged in the second third of the scale. So please pay attention to this information. The next information is going to be about the requirements or when pressure gauges cannot be used. The first, if pressure gauge doesn't have a certification. If second, if pressure gauge doesn't have inspection. If calibration is not correct and calibration time has been expired. Then a point of switching off position doesn't come back to zero after switching off all device, and the glass of pressure gauge is broken or damaged. So in following cases, pressure gauges cannot be used. About calibration and inspection, control check of pressure vessels or pressure gauges actually shall be performed every 6 months or twice a year. Then connect a working pressure gauge with the test control one and check accuracy of working pressure gauges indicators. About the calibration of pressure gauges, calibration should be directed or performed every year by qualified personnel or organizations. After performing calibration, information about successful passing the calibration shall be shown in the passport of the vessel. So like this, we finished the parts about the pressure gauges and shut-off valves. Next will be about the thermometers. Thermometer, it's a device that will be helpful to understand how much is temperature level or how many degrees in pressurized equipment. And there are different types of thermometers, but some requirements for thermometers you can see in this slide. Like the thermometer barrel should be continuously dripped into the lube oil, or let's say car or vehicle oil. Then a red line specifying maximum allowable temperature shall be specified or let's say painted on the scale. And thermometers needs to have next details like end-up caps, pockets, stiffening plate and oil. And one of those devices that will be helpful to understand the working conditions of pressure vessels are pressure safety valves. About pressure safety valves, so the let's speak about the definition of pressure safety valves. What is pressure safety valve? Those are a type of devices that will helpful to release excessive pressure energy from, let's say, the space when the pressure level is over than indicated or permissible level. So of course, as you understand, if there is no such device like a pressure safety valves, when pressure goes over than permissible level, equipment device will be broken at least, or at maximum it can lead to damage to people, equipment, environment. That's why we need to have pressure safety valves, and that extra liquid or gas shall be directed to the place where it will be safer to store, safer to people, environment and other stuff to store. And there are different types of pressure safety valves, because not because there are like spring loaded safety valves, a most popular one, then dead weight safety valves, post safety devices and bursting disc assemblies. So those equipment we use in our life, or even if you pay attention to your home central heating system, for example, they have to be equipped with those devices. And as example, or next requirement for pressure safety valves, safety valves are provided to release extra liquid or gases. It's the first one. The next, safety valves are designed to protect boilers from exceeding the pressure in them by more than 10% of the permitted volume or permitted one. The design of spring valves provided for the exclusions of the possible tightening of the springs in excess of the set valve and their protection from the direct effects of escaping steam jet. The next one, the design of spring valves provided for exclusion of possible tightening of the springs in excess of the set valve and their protection from the direct effect on the escaping steam jet. And if you see, so when you see, look at the slide, let's say here you see the example of spring safety valve. And what is spring safety valve? So if you pay attention with the green arrow on the top of the safety valve, there is a spring. It's compressed. It's not compressed when liquid or gas is, that has very high pressure or high level. It, let's say, moves or removes the spring or squeeze the spring, and after squeezing, excessive energy, water, liquid, gases is going or releasing outside. And it's forbidden to tighten the spring above the set valve. Don't forget this information. And if it was enough to understand how does spring safety valve work, we need to go to next slide, and here you may see possible malfunctions of safety devices or pressure safety devices. The first is freezing, the second sticking, the next valve is inserted into the seat. Check a safety valve regularly by positive opening. We need to open to check how it works, for example, what are the problems of those devices and equipment. The next, installation of vessels, and we are going to speak about construction requirements. How do we need to install vessels? And speaking about installation of vessels, we need to know that actually vessels shall be installed at a place where that the contact with the person, with the environment will be minimum. The first thing, preferably vessels shall be installed in an open air, but if vessel is going to be installed near to facilities, in the close adjacent facilities, or to the living blocks, for example, there are some points that we say like a must have for pressure vessels or pressure valves. Actually, there shall be the wall. Or let's say the screen that will be border, or will be like a shield between the pressure vessels and the living blocks and facilities. The next, pressure vessels can be installed to the ground. They can be penetrated into the ground, but anyway, if ground or water, or let's say the moisture is going to contact with the pressure vessel, we need to know that pressure vessels shall be painted with anti-corrosive materials, let's say. And if pressure vessel is going to be installed and opposite direction or upright direction, and some hatches or some devices located at the top or near the top of the pressure vessels, we need to provide like a ladders or stairs with the handrails to get a place to check the level of pressure, or to provide or other needed operations. And in industrial premises, in cases stipulated by the branch safety requirements, if there is no instruction in the rules by decision of ministry department which control this enterprise. It was about the installation of vessels, and next we are going to speak about vessel registration. If you remember from industrial safety training, we said that all industrial hazardous facilities must be registered with the local industrial safety authorities. How is it going to be done? So actually we need to know what is pressure vessel. We need to have all supportive documents. Then before putting into operation, we need to register with local authorities. And there are some cases when pressure vessels will not be registered into the that database of our government. So pay attention to the next information. The first, group first vessels operating at the wall temperature not exceeding 200 degrees, they are not inspected and registered. Air separation plants and gas separators located inside of heat insulation case. Next, condensed gas transportation barrels. Next, vessels used in closed oil and gas production system. And next, vessels for storing and transportation of liquefied gases, liquids, and granular materials. Those devices are not registered. Other devices from the previous list shall be registered with the local authorities. And currently all registration processes is done by online. No need to go to the places, local authorities. Enough to just to gather all required documents and send via the internet, or we have in our country, in Kazakhstan, there is a special internet let's say the site where we can do all operations only online if you have a key to this system. And what documents we need to prepare in order to get registration of our vessels. So pay attention to the list, like a vessel certificate, certificate of installation quality, connection circuit of vessel indicating, certificate of safety valve, provisional manufacturing inspection, and information that the vessel is approved to be used on the territory of the Republic Kazakhstan. And the next, State Inspection Department is obliged to consider and is obliged to confirm your registration appeal within 10 days. Also, we need to know that when the registration of pressure vessels is required. Installation of vessel in a new place, we need to do new vessel inspection and registration. If the vessel changes the owner and changes in the introduction to the scheme of vessel connection. In these following three parts or cases, we need to register our pressure vessels. And as you remember, we need to register all pressure vessels with the local industrial safety authorities, but also before registering every pressure vessel, we need to provide technical inspection. Actually, we need to know the quality of, or let's say the conditions, safety conditions of pressure vessels. How is it done, or how can we do it? Actually, in order to do technical inspection, we need to involve three different parties. It can be the person who is responsible over pressure device in the company, for example. Not for example, it's like this actually. The next one, expert organization that directly does technical inspection. And the last one, if according to law it is required, we need to involve also state inspectors acting on behalf of industrial safety, let's say the authorities of Republic Kazakhstan. And as I remember, before registering all pressure vessels, they need to be technically inspected. And technical inspection will give permission to operate any pressure device, in the following time, in the next time. Also, engineering certification of vessels that have completed their standard service life is carried out after the specialized expert organization inspected them. Then the possibility to operate the vessels at the lower parameters is confirmed by the strength calculation, and a checking calculation of capacity of the safety valves must be carried out. Such decisions shall be registered with the person who conducted the examination in the certificate of the vessel. And how often shall we provide technical inspections? Depending on the next criteria. For example, if your vessel operating with the medium causing metal corrosion with the rate less than 0.1 millimeters per year, it means those devices shall be inspected every 2 years. Internally and externally shall be inspected every 2 years, and hydrotest shall be provided every 8 years. If vessel operating at the same conditions but every year losses more than 0.1 millimeters per year, it means every year we need to provide visible inspection of internal and external parties. Also, every 8 years we need to provide a hydraulic pressure test. And about exceptional technical inspections, when it is required and when can we do those exceptional technical inspections? At the first, when inspection when vessel has not been used over than 12 months or 1 year. The next, it was disassembled and assembled at the new places. Then if straightening of convex and nicks are applied after reconstruction of vessel, the repair with application of welding or soldering of elements working under pressure. Then before putting the protection coating on vessel walls, also after accidents, we need to require and provide technical inspection again. And one of the safety requirements when we provide technical inspections, we need to stop equipment, fully stop equipment. We need to disconnect from all electrical lines. Also, we need to discharge all excessive energy like a pressure of gas or liquid, doesn't matter. And we need to wait until our pressure equipment is cooled out just fully. Also, we need to check that all the pipelines, tubes, connection details is blanked out of the gases and other environment in pressure device. Then equipment that is going to be tested, we need to just kind of disconnect them, and we need to perform vessels decontamination if required. Disconnect a vessel from all pipes by plugs. Don't forget about the plugs. And in the modern life, when we disconnect equipment and when we just let's say shut the equipment and disconnect from other device for maintenance, repairing, construction, reconstruction, inspections, we need to let to other people know about those such activities that is in process by putting the labels. There is a process which is called logout and tagout. We need to logs, just install logs, and after providing inspection again we can take the logs out or again. And also during the inspection, what do we need to know? Before providing inspection, we need to clean and remove all coating materials from pressure devices. And the next one, as I mentioned, we need to remove all just the insulation or protective materials like coat or paint. Then we need to technical inspection we do it in order to identify any cracks or defects in the welding seams and joints. Also, we need to know if there is a corrosion marks or cracks or surface tears or pores, for example. And if you want to enter the pressure vessel, you need to know that pressure vessel is confined space, and in confined space in our industry, actually in the Kazakhstan, mostly in my experience I work with oil and gas industry, and in oil and gas industry vessels always they used to contain byproducts of the oil. And imagine even small amount of gas if remains in that gas cylinder, in case of using non-intrinsic safe or devices with very high voltage, it may lead to the explosion. That's why lightnings must have energy power no more than 12 volts. And the next one, no foreign object should be located near the vessel within a radius at least 1.5 meters. It may lead to tripping, slipping hazards. It can be obstacle in case of evacuation, and that's why we have this requirement. Then is not allowed to enter to foreigners, let's say strangers, other people who is not operational personnel, who is not responsible to check, inspect that vessel. I mean, only designated people may enter and work in confined space like pressure vessels. And conditions of locking devices and hatches cover. The first one, deformation of cover clamp or hinge yoke, for example, where studs, threads, and lock of the bolts. Walls deformation like bolts, dents, and etc. And the next, as a part of the technical inspection, we call hydraulic pressure test. So from the name, it is very obvious. Here, water is used in order to check the strength level of pressure vessels. How water works will be given at the same at any amount of pressure of water to the tubes, system, pipelines, vessels, and that water will be exceeded than the normal working pressure level of that device, no longer than 5 minutes. and within the 5 minutes we can understand, we can see where the water drips, for example, appearing or coming out. Like this, we can identify the defects of pressure vessels. And about the hydro test, we need to perform hydro test before putting any coating paint on pressure vessels. And the next one, when we do hydro test, we need to remove all air from inside of the pressure vessel. Then we need to open safety valve and make sure that all pressure gauges, everything is working in normal process. Then hydro test shall be performed at positive temperature levels, actually over than 5 degrees in Celsius and below than 40 degrees. But in some cases, at some points, for example, in our climate situation, when keeping or working in similar, let's say, ideal temperature level or climatic conditions is not possible. In that cases, within negotiation with expert organizations, hydro test can be performed by adding different chemicals to give anti-freezing property to the water for performing a hydraulic test. And about the hydro test, build the test pressure of water by the pump and gradually, not just directly. We cannot do it, we shall not do it. It can be very dangerous to operational personnel. And 2 people must be, the 2 pressure gauges at least shall be needed to see the pressure level of vessels during the hydraulic test. And we need to keep proper safety distance in order to be safe and away from the, for example, dangerous hazardous materials. And while performing hydro tests, we need to make sure that we are not hitting with hammers or we are not standing on pressure equipment, because all of them can be led to the fatalities because of explosion. And that's all about the hydraulic test. And imagine, guys, let's say you have bought a pressure vessel. It can be with, let's say, like a huge cylinder or rail car or reservoir, for example. And when manufacturers send you a pressure vessel, they send you full documents like, for example, it can be passport and manual of pressure vessel. But even if you bought it for your own money, even manufacturers send you required documents, it doesn't mean that you can start working with that pressure vessel. First of all, you need to register that pressure vessel. Before registration, you need to provide technical inspections. And after getting, let's say, positive results of technical inspections, and after registering with the local authorities, then you can take an permission to operate a vessel from local authorities in the field of industrial safety. It's a process because local people, local authorities, they need to know where is located your pressure vessel, and they need to know what they need to do in case of any emergencies, what is going to be contained in that pressure vessel. That's why we have those elevators and those, let's say, group of actions or documents for using pressure vessel. And what should be inspected in the, what shall be inspected to take an operation, to permit to operation? That first of all, availability and good conditions of fitting, instruments and safety device. Then compliance of vessel installation with fire safety requirements. Then correct startup of vessel, commissioning. Then availability of qualified maintenance personnel. Only trained personnel who have finished this training and passed exam with positive results can work with pressure equipment. Then availability of safe vessels operation and maintenance manuals, logbooks, other documents specifying in ROK requirements. So, and about permit to operate a vessel, there are some vessels, as I mentioned before, that not registered with local authorities. In that case, for registration and for obtaining a permit shall be participated two parties. The first party, it is expert organization. Second party, it is any person who is responsible for safety and reliability of pressure vessels inside of the organizations. And pay attention to the next information. When the permit to vessel operation has been issued, the following data shall be indicated in the body of pressure vessels. The plate, no less than 200 millimeters to 150 millimeters in size, and in that plate shall be shown the next information like a registration number, permissible pressure, date, months and year of the next external and internal maintenance, inspections and hydro testing. And about inspection arrangements. So how often do we need to provide inspections? It shall be shown in the manufacturer implemented documents, first of all. Then conducting of engineering certification vessel diagnostic operation within the prescribed these time limits provided. And for maintenance of the vessel, as I mentioned, is allowed to work only for qualified personnel who passed this training, and only person cannot work with pressure vessel, as well as pressure vessel cannot be left alone during the operation, because always operational personnel must be located, must be staying near to pressure vessels to do anything in case of any emergencies. And only trade personnel who have finished the special training according to industrial safety requirements or according to the law on civil protection of Republic Kazakhstan can finish this training. If you want to ask me, can work with pressure vessel, how often shall you pass training? It depends on your specialist, the profession. If you work as a managers or engineering personnel, you need to obtain this training every 3 years. If you work as a worker who is directly connected with the pressure vessel, you need to obtain this training every year. Pass exam, then after passing exam, your validity of your certificate will be prolonged. And the next, I would like to highlight the basic hazardous moments for operational personnel who work with pressure vessel, who every day faces different hazardous aspects or facts while working with pressure vessel. The first hazard is frozen vessel can be sought out by vapor or hot water, not by open fire. Potential hazard: air overpressure, oil vapor, ignition, condensation, freezing collected in a vessel, and wear of vessel walls, corrosion. Then hydraulic impact. Then when we need to stop pressure vessels, of course it is huge equipment, expensive device, companies spend too much money, activity, time to install and work with a pressure vessel. But in order to avoid accidents like in Bhopal state or in different places like in Atrau refinery or etc., what shall we do? Actually, when can we stop or suspend the job of pressure vessels? First of all, if the pressure built up higher than working normal nominated pressure, if pressure vessel, the connections are disconnected by different impact, for example, internal, external pressures. Then in case of safety device failure, in case of pressure gauge is failed or not inspected, and if liquid level in the vessel with fire heating decrease is lower than the permissible one. So, and if fire happened, for example, explosion happened, we need to stop the job and go to the master area. And what shall we do if emergency situation happens? Shut off a valve, report about the situation to your direct manager, then record data about failure, malfunction to the logbook of pressure vessel. Then before investigation starts, remain the place of the event, such as before an accident, and try to help to investigation parties if that situation happened in your company. And after providing investigation, if pressure vessel is okay to continue, of course we need to repair the pressure vessel. And repairing activities or safety requirements is similar to construction activities. So we need to consider pressure vessel as a confined space and do whatever is required for constructing or building pressure vessel, like you need to involve fire resistant closing, for example, and intrinsic safe device, for example. You need to open and work with a proper work permit, for example, and you need to check the pressure level. If there is excess pressure level, open the valve, release extra energy, and after all, you need to provide gas testing. Then you can allow entering the pressure vessels. Check gasketes integrity regularly, and it's forbidden to draw up bolts and replace gaskets if a pressure under the vessel under pressure, even hitting with hammer, standing on that pressure vessel, it's not allowed, because any excess, let's say, impact to pressure vessel, when pressure vessel is staying under the pressure, it can lead to explosion or malfunction. Then always close hatch cover tightly. Then don't leave working area alone. You must leave at least one person, but in industrial hazardous facilities, even one person is not enough. We need to leave two persons as a group to work near to equipment. And when work completed, shut off the vessels, ensure that gauge needle returns to zero, record data into the logbook, and pass that logbook to the next shift. Like this, we need to continuously work with pressure devices in order to avoid hazards, accidents, incidents like in Bhopal and other places. Like this, we finished our training about the pressure vessels. I hope it was clear and understandable for you. Thank you for listening, watching us. That's all.